This is the night that Maura Murray disappeared. Join me as we take a look at the timeline of events leading up to this day 23 years ago. February 9th, 2004 was a Friday. It was the start of a long weekend for many people in the United States. President George W. Bush had declared Monday, February a holiday to celebrate Lincoln's birthday, so many Americans would be using the long weekend to get a head start on their celebrations, including a young woman named Maura Murray who just finished her first semester at UMass Amherst. Maura packed up her car with some of her belongings from her dorm room. She took down the posters on her walls, put away the furniture, and even used a Swiffer to clean off the residue left by her now-removed stickers. Maura then headed home for the weekend. She'd only been at college for 5 months, but it had been a difficult semester for her, and she was looking forward to seeing her family and friends back in Vermont. Maura made it all the way home without incident. She was caught on camera arriving at her family home in Haverhill at around 6:17 p.m. The next confirmed sighting of Maura was about 2 hours later, when she was spotted at a popular local hangout spot called the Brick House Pub. Maura was there to meet up with some old friends from high school, some of whom she hadn't seen since graduation 3 months earlier. Among those waiting for Maura at the bar was her former high school classmate, James. He was sitting with his friends when he saw Maura walk through the front door. James described what he saw next. When she walked in, we kind of all looked up. All the guys kind of looked at each other. We were like, oh yeah, she's still hot. According to James, they all shouted hello to her and she returned the greeting before heading over to the bar to order a drink. There was no indication that Maura was anything other than happy to see her old friends. But before long, she turned to James and told him that she needed to leave. She said something about having an early class the following day, and although James tried to convince her to stay longer, Maura insisted that she had to go. She paid her tab, hugged everyone goodbye, and then left the pub at around 8:25 p.m. Little did James and the others know that this was the last time anyone would see Maura for another 13 days. After leaving the pub, Maura got into her 1996 Saturn and drove out of town. At 8:37 p.m., she veered off the road and hit a stone post in the parking lot of a local hardware store. The impact broke her steering wheel, disabling her vehicle, but remarkably, she suffered no injuries. Stranded in the middle of nowhere, Maura dialed 911 on her cell phone. The call came in at 8:46 p.m. When the operator answered, Maura calmly reported the accident and asked for assistance. "Hi, I accidentally hit a mailbox out here and I have no idea where I am," she said. "My car is disabled. I'm in a lot of trouble. I'm pretty sure my wheel is broken. Can you send someone out here to help me?" Although the address she gave the operator was incorrect, the dispatcher correctly identified the location of Maura's car and sent officers from the New Hampshire State Police to find her. But while the police were on their way, Maura left the scene. She hiked almost 2 miles down the road until she reached a house. There she knocked on the door and introduced herself to the homeowner, who was so busy watching television that he didn't think much of the encounter. He later told investigators that he let her use his phone to call a tow truck, but this was a lie. Maura never called a tow truck. She instead called her older brother, Dan, at 9:07 p.m. Maura spoke with their father and told him that she had been in an accident, and that she was waiting for a tow truck to arrive. Little did she know that this conversation would become the final one that her parents would ever have with her. When the tow truck arrived at the abandoned car, they discovered that the vehicle had been there long enough for several animals to already begin scavenging in its interior. This was disturbing, but not enough to raise any red flags for the police. They found no signs of foul play and assumed that Maura had simply left the scene and flagged down a ride. The search for Maura continued throughout the night. Her picture was plastered across billboards and shared thousands of times on social media, but none of it led to any concrete sightings. The only new information that came in was a series of text messages from an unknown number to Maura's cell phone. The messages were cryptic and sometimes downright bizarre. In one message, the writer claimed to have information about Maura's whereabouts. In another, he claimed to be in love with her. In another message, he threatened violence against himself. Despite these odd communications, investigators found no connection between the sender and Maura. Cell phone records showed that the calls were not being routed through any local networks, meaning that the person on the other end could be virtually anywhere in the country. By 11:30 p.m., Maura's disappearance had become a full-blown crisis. Her parents had not heard from her all day. No one had come forward with any new leads, and police were starting to grow concerned. They began going door to door in the small town where her car had been found, asking residents if they had seen her or anyone matching her description. On the other side of the country, Maura's parents were doing the same thing. They went to every house on her street, only to be met with the same answer from each resident. No, they hadn't seen her. Worried that Maura might have been kidnapped, they contacted the California Highway Patrol to do a welfare check on her apartment. But when the police arrived, they found nothing out of the ordinary. Her bed was neatly made. Her clothes were hung up in the closet, and her jewelry was laid out on her dresser. It appeared as though she had simply left the apartment in a hurry. In the meantime, the police investigation was starting to pick up steam. A state trooper combed through the dense woods near the roadway where Maura's car had been found. But after turning up nothing, he had to return to headquarters to work on other cases. This meant that the area where her car had been abandoned would go nearly 13 days without being properly searched. In the morning, Maura's parents returned to New Hampshire to continue the search. They were joined by hundreds of volunteers, all desperate for any new leads. But despite all the attention, Maura remained missing. Her parents grew increasingly worried and desperate. Their daughter had always been communicative. If she skipped class, she would call to let them know. If she was running late, she would text them from her cell phone. But this time there was nothing. She had vanished without a trace. After spending all day searching for their daughter, Maura's parents made an emotional plea for her to get in touch with someone, anyone. Through tears, they begged whoever had her to bring her home. That's all they wanted, was for their daughter to come home. Now, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, thank you for watching. See you next time.